The House Beneath the Vines, Episode 2, The House Plywood Built. Quarter-sized raindrops punched through the thinning canopy above me. Even the dense web of dying branches couldn't hold them back. The rain battered the leaves like desperate soldiers breaking through a Roman phalanx. Within seconds, the forest floor turned to mud. The strange tracks in the road, the hoof and the odd handprint beside it, began to blur beneath the downpour, barely visible in the fading glow of my dying headlights. I started to wonder, had I ever seen them at all? Then the forest moved. The earth shuddered beneath my boots. A violent crack tore through the trees behind me. Branches snapped, trunks groaned. Something enormous collapsed somewhere in the darkness. The sound rolled through the woods like distant artillery. For a moment, I just stood there, listening to the storm swallow the noise. Then instinct kicked in. I turned and hurried back toward the wreck of my SUV. The engine had long since died, but the exposed block was still hot enough to vaporize the rain that struck it. Steam curled upward in ghostly ribbons. Tick, tick, tick. Cooling metal echoed through the forest. I yanked the door open and climbed back inside. The interior light flickered weakly to life. For now, it still worked. Somewhere deep in the back of my mind, a thought whispered that this vehicle was the last fragile thread tying me to civilization. Once it died completely, I might too. I forced the thought away. My pack still sat patiently in the passenger seat where it had for the entire drive. A quiet companion, never speaking, yet carrying a world of secrets inside it. I looked up the road through the fractured windshield. The house couldn't be much farther. Could I make it? Should I even try? I pulled out my phone. No signal. 4% battery. Of course. I kept a charging bank in my bag, but even with a full charge, there was no chance of getting a call out here. Maybe the house still had a landline. Maybe there was a hill nearby where I could catch a signal. Either way, I couldn't stay here. I had to move. Years ago for Christmas, someone had given me a small car survival kit. It had lived strapped behind the headrest of the driver's seat ever since. I'd only opened it once. I remember dumping the contents all over the floor of my apartment, getting frustrated trying to repack it, and eventually cramming everything back inside before tossing it into the car and forgetting about it completely. It's funny how something you throw away one day can save your life the next. I unzipped the pouch. Within seconds, I discovered the word survival in the product description should have been placed firmly inside quotation marks. There were a few bandages, a thermal blanket roughly the size of a placemat, a tiny flashlight that thankfully came with batteries, and a multi-tool whose most exciting feature was a tiny hatchet blade that might have been impressive if the thing that hit my car had been made out of paper towels and wet cardboard, which I doubted it was. Still, it was better than nothing. I kept the flashlight in hand and shoved the rest of the pack into the green army pouch. Then, I stuffed the pouch into my pack. For a moment I just sat there, looking around the wrecked cabin, spider-webbed cracks across the windshield, smoke curling lazily from the air vents, dashboard lights flickering in uneven pulses. The SUV looked less like a vehicle now and more like something that had been gutted. I rested my hand on the door handle, took a slow breath, then pulled. The latch clicked. The door groaned open like it was begging me not to do this. But I didn't have a choice. No one was coming. Not tonight. I stepped out into the storm. Lightning ripped across the sky. Thunder answered a heartbeat later. Cold rain soaked through my jacket instantly. I wore my usual travel clothes, an orange leather jacket over a cream-colored hoodie, jeans, and the leather boots I insisted on wearing year-round, even in the middle of summer. Those boots had carried me halfway across the country. Somehow, I had the feeling they were about to earn the strangest story of their lives. Behind me, somewhere deep in the forest, something moved. Then, the trees went quiet again. I clicked the flashlight on. Its weak beam joined the fading glow of my headlights in the futile task of pushing back the encroaching darkness. I took a breath. Reality was starting to settle in. How exactly was I going to get out of this? My mind did what it always does in a crisis. It sprinted straight toward every possible worst-case scenario. And I'm not proud to say, I started spiraling a bit here. But then I remembered something a friend once told me, something that had saved my sanity more than once. He said, "Isaac, you're trying to walk the whole distance in one stride. Take it one step at a time. Left foot, right foot. Left foot, right foot." A 4-word haiku that had gotten me this far. Maybe it could get me a little farther. I didn't need to figure out how to survive the whole night. Just this moment, then the next. One step at a time. I slung the pack over my shoulder and pulled my hood up against the rain. All right, left foot planted. Shelter. That was the right foot. The house couldn't be far now. I thought about the crash I'd heard earlier, the tremor that shook the ground. Something had fallen, or something had pushed it over. And whatever it was still out there in the woods with me. I aimed the flashlight farther down the road. The beam barely cut through the rain. No telling how long these batteries would last. It was time to move. My boots squelched in the thick mud as I started forward. Every step felt like it carried me a little farther from the normal world, like the earth itself was trying to drag me back before I wandered too far into something I couldn't understand. The road curved sharply ahead. I followed it, and that's when I saw what had caused the noise. Old Man Thomas. That's what we used to call it. A 40-foot sweet gum tree my cousins and I had climbed 100 times as kids. A tire swing still hung from its lowest branch, or what was left of it. Now the whole tree lay across the road in a shattered mess of splintered wood and tangled branches. The trunk looked like it had been twisted apart. Not snapped. Twisted. I stepped closer. Rain ran down the bark and dark rivers. One time, I'd fallen from that tree and sprained my ankle. It hurt like hell, but I still ran around on it the rest of the day like nothing had happened. Funny thing about injuries, they never really leave you. Even now, I could feel the ghost of that pain in my ankle, like a cold hand with sharp nails, refusing to let go. I moved around the fallen trunk, stepping off the road and into the woods. The forest swallowed the flashlight beam almost instantly, and the deeper I went, the quieter it became. No birds, no insects, just the steady hiss of rain through the leaves. Then something caught the edge of my light, a shape in the brush. At first, I thought it was just a pile of branches. Then, I saw the boot. Mud-covered, still attached to a leg. My stomach dropped. It was the body of a man, or what was left of him. He wore an orange hunting vest, camo pants, and hiking boots. All of it was soaked dark with blood. From the way his body was twisted around the base of the tree, it was clear he hadn't crawled there to die. He'd been thrown there. Whatever hit him had slashed him so savagely his spine was visible from the front. His entire gut had been torn open. The surrounding tissue looked less like flesh and more like something that had gone through a wood chipper. For nearly his entire life, my grandfather had been a firefighter and EMT. He used to tell me stories about the things he'd seen. A man fused to the burning wreckage of his car, but somehow still breathing through one open nostril, and others who hadn't been nearly that lucky. I listened to those stories with the kind of fascinated horror kids have when they hear something terrible, but they know it's happening somewhere far away. Nothing he ever told me prepared me for the real thing. But one night, he did say something that stuck with me. He said, "Kid, you'll never forget the smell of blood when it's all over the ground." Standing there in the rain, I finally understood what he meant. I gagged. The metallic stink hung in the wet air like something alive. What creature on earth could have done this? A bear? A 40-point stag? A supremely pissed-off honey badger? My mind flashed back to the deep gouges carved across the hood of my SUV. A cold chill crawled down my spine. I thought about stepping closer, checking his pockets, wallet, ID, something that might tell me who this guy was. If I somehow made it out alive, maybe I could give his family some closure. Maybe I could finally do something good with my life. But my feet wouldn't move. Instead, I slowly backed away. And that is when the flash hit me. A burst of white exploded in my face. I threw my hands up instinctively. For a moment, I saw nothing but stars. When my vision cleared, I blinked the rain out of my eyes and looked around for the source. There it was, mounted to a bent piece of rebar driven into the ground. A trail camera. Out here, people use them to track deer, sometimes trespassers. The small red sensor light blinked once, then it went dark again. Somewhere, stored on a little plastic memory card inside that camera, was a photograph of me standing in the rain next to a butchered corpse. And I had the unsettling feeling that it wouldn't be the last picture it took tonight. I covered my face with the crook of my arm and turned away from the scene. The forest path continued onward, vanishing into the rain. I had no idea what cardinal direction I was heading. North, south, Mars. It didn't matter. I wasn't a survivalist. I wasn't really anything at all. Those thoughts started creeping in again. I changed the channel. Right foot. Shelter. Don't lose sight of the goal. My flashlight beam flickered. I'd been gripping it so tightly the cheap tin base had started to unscrew in my palm. I stopped long enough to tighten it. The beam steadied again. Good enough. I kept walking. The corpse of the poor man unfortunate enough to make the same mistake I had slowly disappeared behind me in the darkness. If I made it out of this place, I promised myself I'd send someone back for him. By now, my clothes were completely soaked. Rain ran down my collar and pulled into my boots. I was dressed entirely wrong for this adventure, but I pressed on anyway. Eventually, the trees opened into a small clearing, and there it stood, my cousin's clubhouse. A crooked monument to child engineering, cobbled together from warped plywood, spare nails, wood glue, and what must have been an unreasonable amount of confidence. By some miracle, it stood 2 stories tall, and it even had a little balcony. I stared at it through the rain. A memory surfaced. I'd once hidden up there in the middle of January, cold fingers fumbling with a pack of Japanese trading cards I'd overpaid for. My cousin had sworn they were stupid. Naturally, that meant I had to buy them. Some nights, we even slept up there. 3 kids stuffed into sleeping bags, his golden retriever curled up between us. We froze our asses off while telling ghost stories. Back then, it felt like adventure. Now, it sounded like hypothermia with extra steps. Something moved in the woods behind me, pulling me to the present. A heavy footfall. Close. The ground trembled faintly beneath my boots. I froze. Slowly, very slowly, I turned my head. The trees behind me stood motionless, rain sliding down their bark. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, but something had stepped there. I knew it. My eyes snapped back toward the clubhouse. I took a breath and ran. Mud splashed beneath my boots as I sprinted across the clearing. The moment my foot hit the ground, another step echoed behind me, heavy, deliberate, matching my pace. I was being hunted. My breath went shallow. My legs suddenly decided this would be an excellent time to resign from service. Not now. Please, not now. I forced them forward. A few desperate strides later, I reached the crooked wooden door of the clubhouse. Up close, it looked much smaller than I had remembered. But that's the thing about childhood. Everything seems larger than life. Still, there was definitely room inside for one terrified adult. I grabbed the handle and yanked the door open. The hinges screamed. I slipped inside and slammed it shut behind me. For a moment, I just leaned against it, listening. The rain hammered the roof. Wind rattled the loose boards. And somewhere out in the darkness, something moved through the trees. Slow, circling, testing. The old clubhouse creaked around me like a tired ship. My flashlight beam swept across the interior. The place hadn't changed much. Dirt floor, straw scattered in the corners. In the far corner, there sat a cast iron pot, still half full of ancient cigarette butts. Scooter used to hide them there so my great-grandmother wouldn't catch him smoking. And leaning beside it, what my eyes mistook for a rifle at first, was only a broken BB gun. The wooden stock was split clean down the middle, the barrel bent just enough to make it useless, like something had stepped on it. Scooter used to swear that thing could take down anything in the woods. I guess something out there proved him wrong. Funny the things that survive. Another step sounded outside. Closer now. A branch snapped. I swallowed hard. The creature didn't rush the structure. It didn't claw the walls. It didn't roar. It just walked around the clearing. Slow, patient, like it knew exactly where I was, and it wasn't in any hurry. I suddenly remembered the balcony. If I could get high enough, maybe I could see the house. Maybe I could see anything. I climbed the narrow ladder to the upper level, each rung groaning like it might give way. The balcony door stuck halfway open. I forced it the rest of the way. Cold rain hit my face instantly. The forest stretched out before me, black, endless. For a moment, I saw nothing. Then, far beyond the trees, a small golden glow appeared through the rain. A light in the distance. The house. Someone had left a light on, and for the first time since the crash, I felt something dangerously close to hope.